One time for your mind. I am Architect AP and you're back on Versus Everything. Welcome back. Today, I wanted to improvise a little something. I did not prepare for this. I did not kind of zero in on this topic for a while, unlike I usually do. But in saying that, it's something that I saw doing the rounds around the internet, and a lot of people are passionate about it. And, I have my own view on the subject as well. And the subject is this perceived war on masculinity, war on manhood. And, it doesn't necessarily mean that I see it as such, but at the same time, I do feel that it's a topic that I can discuss. I have my own opinion, I have my own view on this. And, I'd like to think that my view is unbiased and balanced, at least to some extent. Some may argue, and, well, you know what you gotta do if you want to argue with me, right? The reason why I decided to talk about this is I've seen this article doing the rounds on the internet about how the UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya has praised an individual called Andrew Tate, right? I haven't really paid much attention to Andrew Tate in the past, despite the fact that, yes, he is a very well-known kind of internet personality who's been accused of a number of things, has recently been held in custody in Romania on some charges. All of that is, it's an interesting story in itself, but, I thought that I'd look at this whole thing about men, right? Like, what are we talking about with men here? So in this article, Israel Adesanya talks about how certain individuals, such as, he himself likes to see himself as one of those individuals, but individuals like Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, and David Goggins, encouraging men to be accountable. They're kind of encouraging men to be masculine, to be strong, to be what some may argue are traditional values for men, right? I personally don't like the idea of traditional values only because tradition to me doesn't necessarily translate to a good idea. A lot of traditions have been around, but it doesn't mean that they're good traditions. They're just there because they've always been done. I like to look at ideas in a more impartial light and just kind of decide for myself whether they're good or bad and whether I should kind of embrace them or not simply because they're traditions. In any case, this whole idea of toxic masculinity, it's been quite interesting how it evolved, right? Previously, I've spoken about a spectrum of choice, about a spectrum of decision, a spectrum of any polarizing issue, right? And unlike many issues where it kind of starts on one end and then develops an opposite end, which then kind of swings from one side to another and eventually stabilizes somewhere in the middle where we figure out a solution to a problem. This whole issue seemed to have kind of almost originated in the middle somewhere and then started really swinging to become the polarizing issue. It seems that it started off with somebody identifying certain what they call toxic traits that men have. I can agree and I can admit to the fact that, yes, certain traditional masculine traits can be viewed as toxic. Yes, there's a lot of them. I do feel that aggression quite often gets confused with things like determination and strong will and just strength in general. Aggression and domination gets mistaken for some of the more positive traits that men possess. When we're talking about aggression, we're talking about responding emotionally to certain things. I think recently I've seen a good quote. I can't say exactly who it was that said it, but respond rather than react, right? I think when you respond, you can respond with strength and determination. When you react, you tend to react with aggression. It's a defensive mechanism, and if it's not under control, if it's not something that you have kind of conscious control over, you can really respond with aggression that will yield you negative results. It's not going to yield you any positivity. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be a war. It's going to be a conflict that isn't going to be constructive. It's not going to lead to any solution. It's going to lead to negativity. It's going to lead to hurt feelings. It's going to lead to injuries, death. These things can really escalate. So, things like that, I think it's important to identify what they are before we kind of start arguing the opposite side of this war on masculinity, right? I think it's important to take a good look inside, to be introspective. One other trait that I think is important to identify as, potentially toxic is suppression of emotion and ability to deal with our emotions as men. If you look at these different personalities, so-called influencers, shall we say, in this field, they all have rather conflicting messages. Others will say there's nothing wrong with that. You don't need emotions. You should suppress them and you shouldn't kind of give them any credibility. Others say, yes, you should, but you should do it privately. Others say that you should be able to communicate them. I tend to kind of lean towards the latter. I don't think that you should suppress your emotions. From my personal experience, nothing positive comes out of that. If you suppress your emotions, eventually they will find a way to manifest themselves and they'll come back. They'll come back with a vengeance. I think the key thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to kind of be weak in the face of emotions. You just have to figure out how to deal with them in a healthy way, how to communicate them in a healthy way, to not get yourself into trouble, to identify who it is you can communicate these issues with, right? You look at yourself, can you communicate these issues with your partner? If you can't, you need to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because you simply don't know how to do it? Or is it because you haven't tried? You're afraid of communicating these things with your partner and potentially, making yourself look vulnerable around them? And if that's how you feel, the next question is, well, should you be in this relationship? What do you get out of it if you feel that, you will be disadvantaged and exposed, so to speak, around your partner if you communicate such emotions? Because at the end of the day, somebody that is truly aligned to you, somebody that really is your partner, your lover, your friend, you should be able to communicate with them. You should be able to say what's on your mind. You should be able to kind of open up, to not even necessarily try and get them to solve your problems, but at least so that you get some clarity, so that your partner is able to understand you. The same goes for your friends as well. I think it's an important question to ask yourself, which of your friends are your actual friends and who are just acquaintances that are potentially a competition? They always talk about fake friends. Reality is, there's no fake friends, because if they're fake friends, they're not really your friends, unless you're really missing a key point in your character judgment skills. It's an important thing to have, because if you can't read the people around you, you're going to expose yourself to some negative shit. So if you feel like you can't communicate certain things around your friends, then ask yourself, are they really your friends? Potentially, you may need to make your circle a little bit smaller, right? At this point, now that I've pointed these things out, this is where we can start looking at the situation objectively, right? Why is it that we find ourselves at a point in history where masculinity is now kind of become this negative thing? Why have we found ourselves at this point on the spectrum where we're now not talking about toxic masculinity? We're now talking masculinity is toxic. We've kind of made this blanket generalization that everything a man does is essentially negative, that men are all about violence, they're all about aggression, they make everybody feel unsafe, whether it's women, trans people, whether it's, well, just about anyone, really. Now, I didn't come here today to point the finger at anyone. Reality is, I don't think that identifying a particular person or group of people is really going to help us navigate this issue. And it's quite interesting that the whole polarizing issue has become an issue of, once again, the left and the right, the liberals and the conservatives, which is interesting because that kind of puts me outside of this whole spectrum altogether, because I tend to not be politically aligned to either side. But reality is, I'm not the only person that feels that way anymore. Even people that I know traditionally may have been aligned to the left are now feeling themselves pushed out to the right. And it makes it even more curious that at this point I'm talking about the left and the right like we all understand what it is. This wasn't always the case. So why did this become such a political issue? And to be honest, I think the reason why we ended up here is because the left has become the extremists that they once only accused the right of being. See, I don't want to single out feminists, because on this whole issue there's actually two different camps of feminists, because there are feminists that are just purely anti-men. They're these extremist, radical feminists that just hate men altogether. And in a lot of ways you could almost say that it's a supremacist movement. On the other hand, you've got feminists that are striving for equality. And we're starting to see these feminists join forces with men. These are women that can appreciate the masculine properties of a man. These are women that understand that to be a feminist, it doesn't necessarily mean competing with men, competing with masculinity. It's understanding that and embracing the fact that females, that, you know, the divine feminine can do things that men simply cannot. And I'll be the first one to admit it, right? Because it's got to the point where the feminists were so concerned with showing everyone that they can do what men do, that they've forgotten what women can do that men can't. So in that sense, I think it's very important to understand that the women in all this play a very important part, that this is something that men and women can and in fact really should come together on. Because men, with the right support, with the right encouragement, with the right, shall we say, nourishment, can do great things. Men build, men create, men get through and persevere, men protect and provide. And so this support and encouragement, more often than not, it'll come from women. Just think about it. Good mothers can raise good men. There's a reason why there's this saying behind every great man is a woman, because that's true. Now that doesn't mean that this takes away from the woman. That doesn't mean that the man can't do the same for the woman. In fact, this is where equality should truly be. It's the support of each other rather than competing for the same piece of something. You support me, I support you. Together we're a strong unit. We support each other's dreams. We grow. You know, it's nice to see these kind of memes about, you know, mutual growth and strong relationships all over social media. But reality is, a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people simply don't embrace that. All we do is look for red flags in each other and reasons why we should continue to be these drifters through life. I think it's also important for men to take some accountability, not just for what they do, but also for how they think and process shit. Because when you listen to a lot of these, you know, masculinity messiahs, they all want to present themselves as, you know, these lions, and they're encouraging all their followers to be lions. But quite often you turn around and you see a lot of these followers end up being just that. Followers, a bunch of fucking hyenas. You know, you'll be all over social media reading all the shit about how, yeah, I'm a man, fuck everybody else, I'm fighting the good fight. In reality, you ain't doing shit. You know, you're just the opposite extreme. You're just doing the same dumb shit and you're not even realizing it. You know, two wrongs never made a right. Just think about it for a second. Think about what an ideal man is in your mind. An ideal, strong, solid man doesn't go around starting shit fights with everybody, trying to step to everybody. A solid, self-respecting man carries himself with respect. He's a man of his word. He can appreciate and respect every person. It doesn't matter who they are, man, woman, trans, gay, straight, it doesn't fucking matter. because you gotta give respect to get respect. I feel like this is an ancient saying that we've kind of forgotten. Not just because everybody else around you is throwing shit, is stomping their feet and screaming about how they're this and they're that and they're right and this is the reason why you're wrong. Should you stoop to that level? This is basic shit. See, even as I'm saying this, I'm hearing my mother in the back of my mind. This is the kind of stuff you used to hear as a kid. Just because somebody does some dumb shit, should you stoop to that level? Should you match that stupidity? If everyone is such a fucking lion, why do you care about the opinions of the sheep? I think the key point that I'm trying to make in all of this is we as men need to start respecting ourselves if we are to be respected by everybody else. We also need to start showing respect if we want that respect. Now understand that by showing respect, it doesn't mean that you're laying down for someone. It's just affording that level of respect to someone until they prove otherwise, until they prove to you that maybe perhaps they don't deserve that respect, that maybe perhaps they're disrespectful to you or disrespectful to someone else. This is when they start exposing their character flaws. This is when somebody is starting to look like a bitch ass. And should you stoop to that level? Of course not. Now, no doubt, it's a hyper-competitive world. It's a hyper-competitive economy. Capitalism has mutated past its original point. So at this point, everybody treats each other like some sort of an enemy. You see these things everywhere. You see it on social media. You'll see it in your workplace. You see it in the streets. And there's no doubt about the fact that the brunt of all the heavy shit that goes on out there falls on the shoulders of men. I agree with the fact that we should not be feeling sorry for ourselves. We do need to be strong. We do need to rise to the occasion. Shit's not getting better for a little while, and we'll need to make sure that it does. And with that being said, this resilience doesn't need to come at a cost of our emotional well-being. Be a good judge of character. Figure out who your people are. Develop a good relationship with your partner. Develop a good channel of communication. Make sure you understand each other and be able to communicate this shit. Because if you can't, perhaps it's time for you to get stepping. Perhaps it's time for you to explore where it is you need to go to make sure that you find that peace. Make sure that you always strive to be the best version of yourself. Keep working to improve. If you're working for a company, get that promotion. If you're running a business, grow the business. Look after yourself. Look after your health. Go to the fucking gym. Go train. Watch what you consume, both through your mouth and through your ears and through your eyes. How you present and carry yourself has a great impact on how the outside world interacts with you. So make sure you pay attention to that. If you carry yourself like a dipshit, if you're constantly looking for a fight with someone, you will get exactly that. And no positivity will ever come from that. A man builds, a man develops, a man helps others, a man brings everybody up. We're all products of our environment, but at a certain point, we get the ability to impact our environment, to build that environment into how we want to see it. And when we start doing that, the world around us reacts to that. And if the impact that you're having on your environment is positive, you will get positivity into your life. You will gain wealth. You will gain friendships. You will gain love. Now, I know I may have put a bit of energy and intensity into this, but reality is I'm passionate about this because I'm a man myself. I live through this every single day. And yes, it is a challenge. It is always a battle. But at the end of the day, I do my best to get through it, to be the best version of myself that I can be for my family, for my partner, for the people that I work with. That's what it's all about. At the end of the day, when I go out, I want to be remembered for all the positive things I did. Whatever legacy you leave, it has to be a positive legacy for everyone. So here's my little spiel for you. I'm sure this isn't the last time I'm talking about this subject either. I'm Architect AP, one time for your mind, your versus everything.